today's topic is one of the most sophisticated topics that I can think of, and that is how to come out of old patterns. What we're essentially talking about here is growth. There are essentially two energies at play, two parts of this dynamic. One is, and it's important to recognize this, to embrace it, is that life wants us to grow. Everything is designed to have us come out of our comfort zones, out of the smallness of any beliefs. Ultimately, every belief is a self-limiting belief. Everything's possible. And then we come along and we just believe in a handful of things. And so we limit the possibilities, essentially, through our belief system, through our truth structure, as I call it. And so to understand that on one side, life is always asking us to come out of the smallness of our beliefs, out of that scary, lonely, small place that we get into when we're lost in thought, when we only exist in past and future and never really present with what's happening, with the unfolding of life. So there's that part. The ongoing pull to become bigger and more whole, because that's ultimately what that is, to become more complete. When we're in a place of self-criticism and self-doubt and fear and anxiety and trying to predict the future and controlling and steering, all of these primarily mental aspects, then we stay small. On the other side of the dynamic is our resistance to this growth. And there's a need for this resistance because we can't just expand momentarily into everything that we are. It's just not how it works. There's a resistance to this growth because growth needs to be gradual. We are limited by the 3D dimension, this physical space that we're in, our bodies, our minds, our nerves. Our ability to grow isn't just exponentially instant. Otherwise, life would prompt us to grow and we would instantly grow. And so we can't quite do that. There's a built-in resistance. You could be, anyone who's experienced this, you could be working on yourself and meditating and reflecting and practicing mindfulness and going to retreats and reading books and watching videos and really embracing the life as a teacher role. And still there's a limit to how fast we can grow. There's going to be a point where you're tired, even exhausted from this constant reflection, this constant growth, this constant expansion. Even if you want it, even when you've fully embraced it, that this is primarily why we're here. Career and things we create and relationships and house we buy and vacations we take, all of that is secondary. And not to mean that it's less, but it's an expression of our state of self-awareness, how we interact with the world, how we interpret things is an extension of us. It's a mirror of us. So we're only really here to work on ourselves and experience ourselves, life as a mirror, life as a teacher, so that we can become more self-aware. And that greater self-awareness leads to inclusion. It brings us closer to one another, compassion, empathy, being able to be of service because we've done the work on ourselves. So now our energy field opens up and we become experts at healing and experts at overcoming things. And now we can be of service to others. So that's the process. And so it's really just about learning to come out of resistance as much as possible. Resistance to this demand, if you will, of life to want us to grow, to force us to grow. We're being forced to grow. So initially, whether we're conditioned this way or our soul is so shocked and traumatized by suddenly finding itself in this body and in this three-dimensional realm, and whatever the reason may be, initially we think things are happening to us. We look around and people, places, and things, life is happening, life is unfolding. And when it doesn't unfold according to our mental plan, our expectations, the way we've been conditioned by our environment, by our family structures, our lineage, our generation, our gender, media, so much conditioning, so many outside voices. But so when we first arrive, we're in this mindset that things are happening to us. And as at some point we start to reflect, and we start to realize that, no, well, we're seeing things because of who we are. We say a person standing right next to you, witnessing the exact same situation, will have a very different interpretation of it based on their internal makeup, based on who they are and their experiences and their conditioning. So there's that objective reality of what's happening, but we all have and carry a subjective reality interpretation of that. But then, so as we become more self-aware, we realize, because we realize things are happening as a result of how we see them, how we interpret them, that ultimately life is not happening to us, but it's happening because of us. Things are happening the way they're happening because of us. And then we work in that realm for a while, and we look at what is triggering us is really pointing to things within us that we need healing. When we feel challenged, it's because we feel challenged. Something inside of us is responding, reacting, is small, is in a state of lack, state of limitation, and it wants to come out of that. The world is beckoning us to grow out of that smallness, that limited mindset. And so then we start to realize that life is not just happening to us, it's happening because of us and ultimately happening for us. It wants us to inhabit our biggest self, our fullest potential. And it is always asking us to grow. So again, having realized that, there's still a built-in resistance to us. And it's really all about coming out of that resistance as much as possible. We're going to grow as fast as we can. We'll need periods of rest. We'll need periods of just tuning out, watching a movie, taking a vacation, whatever it is that isn't related to self-growth, but ultimately it will call us back to it. That's the journey of self-realization. And so the best we can do, the most we can do, is come out of resistance to the growth. It'll take its own twists and turns. Life will send lessons our way, this way or that way. It doesn't mean suddenly we're out of resistance, that everything is rosy and perfect and positive. It's the challenges primarily that grow us. So we're freeing ourselves up to embrace the challenges. If you could really embrace it, you could say we're inviting the challenges, because they're the ones that make us grow the most. You can ask any person who's quote unquote successful or made it, they always talk about how They learn from their failures, not from their successes. Of course, failure and success, positive, negative, all of these are labels, they're mental judgments. So one of the ways to come out of resistance is to come out of judgment, which is to come out of our minds, because the mind is a judging tool. It likes to label and define and apply certain characteristics and take a snapshot of what something is or who somebody is, and then perpetually work off of that snapshot. When nothing is still, nothing stays the same. Everybody's evolving, growing, failing, learning. So coming out of the judgmental mind is a key component to coming out of resistance. Resistance to what's happening. And it can be so tricky. The resistance to what's happening usually expresses itself in these little things. You literally don't want traffic to be as bad as it is this morning. We get annoyed by the beep in the car when we don't put our seatbelt on. Our computer's freezing right when we need it the most. So these are all opportunities. Remember, we go from life is happening to us to because of us to for us. So all these little things, big and little things that annoy us, are ultimately our opportunities to practice non-resistance, to practice non-judgment. And there's lots of research and books written on how 1% improvement here or there ultimately turns into a big change in our lives. Like a golf ball that's hit a few degrees off winds up a great distance from the hole. So in the same way, we want to improve our non-reactivity, even just a little bit will make a big difference. As always, I encourage the virtual hand, which is at the bottom of your screen, if there are questions. Because everyone's life situation is different. It all makes sense when we hear it rationally, but then life is tricky because it sends us these situations that are always a little different. We may have learned a lesson last week, and this week something comes along that's just similar situation, but just there's a twist. And that little twist throws us off again. We get lost in reaction and resistance. We thought we had learned our lesson, and here we go again. We get lost in trying to control and steer and want it to be different. Yes, you can also put any comments into the chat. Thank you, A. What we're developing when we're practicing non-resistance and non-judgment and mindfulness is essentially our awareness of the situation. When we can be aware of our thoughts, then we no longer get lost in thought. We're not subject to identifying with the thought and it pulling us, hijacking our attention away and pulling us into kind of this fantasy la-la land where anything goes, the regrets of the past, predictions of the future, and it's all not real. And so having an awareness of our thoughts if not prevents us from getting lost in thought, but it helps us notice that we're lost in thought sooner. We come out of it sooner. It helps us notice the intensity of our thoughts, because every thought has a weight to it, positive or negative. And we only have so much life force energy to give. And when we give our attention to something, a thought, we become it. We take it in. We're engaging with it. So we have to be very vigilant what thoughts we give our attention to, because that's the energy that we then take in, that we absorb. So awareness of our thoughts helps us stay out of being lost in thought. Awareness of our feelings, even more important, is that we don't react to feeling a certain way, because ultimately that's how we repeat the past. Past behaviors, it's never a reaction to what's around us. It's always a reaction to what's around us, how what's around us makes us feel, which is always an interpretation of what's around us, our own interpretation. Situation happens, we pick it up through our senses, seeing, hearing, tasting, smelling, touching. And then based on our previous conditioning, that sensation, that sensory input is interpreted and shows up as a feeling in our body. And if we resist that feeling, if it's unpleasant, or if we cling to that feeling when it's pleasant, we not only keep that feeling stuck, the energy of that feeling stays stuck in us, but we're also preventing ourselves from rewiring our interpretation of the event outside of us, the sensory input. An example, you could pick up the smell of smoke, something's burning, and person A interprets that as memories from going to summer camp when they were a kid, fun, games, singing, story sharing, positive, pleasant interpretation. Person B can pick up the exact same smell of smoke, but in them, it reminds them of a fire that happened in their building maybe one time in their house, and it was traumatic. So the exact same sensory input, the smell of smoke, leads to two very different interpretations of it, which leads to two very different sensations in your body. One person, pleasant sensation, the other person, person B, unpleasant sensation. So if the person A clings to the sensation of, ooh, I like this memory of summer camps and good times, I want more of it, I want more of it. That's what keeps that feeling stuck, and that's how you start steering your environment. It's the source of addiction, ultimately. You know, we react to a pleasant feeling, want more of it, and then seek out more of it. We start controlling and steering our environment, looking for it, trying to relive it constantly. And person B, the one that was traumatized by the smell of smoke, wants to push that feeling away, pushes the sensation down, and that's what keeps that stuck. So every time that person smells smoke, it's going to rekindle that trauma. And for both person A and person B, the way to come out of it is to learn to observe the sensation for what it is, no longer react to the feeling. That then goes back up the signal chain and rewires the brain to no longer interpret it as a negative experience or a positive experience. So as long as we're in reaction to our feelings, then we're in reactivity to the world around us. Some questions here. Why don't we feel happy and enjoy a fulfilled life? Well, that's what we're here to create for ourselves ultimately. We're conditioned by all these limiting beliefs, this reactivity to how we feel. And this reactivity to how we feel keeps us small. It keeps us in a limited place. When we identify with thoughts and when we identify with feelings, it shrinks our experience of life. When you're attached to a thought, if you just think about it, when you're attached to a thought and you're following it down the rabbit hole, nothing else exists. You're lost in that thought. You become that thought. You identify with that thought. And that thought, the way the monkey mind works, leads to another thought and another thought. And so you spend 5, 10, 20 minutes lost in thought before you kind of snap out of it and you're back to really here. So why is life designed this way? You know, that's the ultimate question. But the fact is that it is designed this way, that we're having to generate more awareness on behalf of ourselves, but ultimately on behalf of everyone, the world, because the light of our own awareness then inspires others to become more self-aware. The way we treat them, the way we see them, the way we listen to them, the way we're compassionate, the way we help them, all of this comes from our own awareness, which only comes from our own healing. So we're here to heal ourselves, become more self-aware, and then be of service to others. And then that is the ultimate form of happiness, because when we've healed ourselves, we're no longer reacting to thoughts and feelings. We're allowing thoughts and feelings to arise and pass, which is to allow life to arise and pass, which is allowing life to flow through us. And when something is flowing through us without resistance, without us judging it, without us reacting to it, then we become that greater current. Then we become the life. And that's when we're really fulfilled. That's when that happiness is maybe overused term, but that joy of the passion for living and to experience yourself as an expression of life, that's where that sets in. So I hope that helped. How to allow more of the abundant life, joy, love, consciousness, etc., because I find myself fearing it less and yet looking to improve the allowance so I can be more of me. So thank you, Sophia. So you say something really important in there, and that is abundance is joy, love, consciousness, and so forth. People tend to think of it as money or material things and having a lot. But abundance ultimately is a full experience of life. And that full experience of life includes the unpleasantries. It's not just pleasant things. To feel is ultimately the highest form of living. And that means feeling the full spectrum of our emotions, positive and negative. Ultimately, those are labels, they'll fall into the background. The more we practice mindfulness, the more we're practicing just being, the more we're just practicing experiencing. We're just experiencing from a place of awareness. And from that place, everything is beautiful. All our feelings, all our thoughts that arise and pass. And we stop labeling them so much as positive or negative. Yes, they have a certain charge that becomes our choice. We can then kind of spend more time on some and let others go, let others pass. But ultimately, it's the full experience of life passing through us. As Joseph Campbell would say, the rapture of our aliveness is what we're seeking. That's the highest form of abundance. It's the highest form of being, of experiencing ourselves and our unique blueprint within that. that what we have to share, what we have to give, which is our challenges, which is all the things we were in resistance to. So you have the awareness there that you're aware that the abundance is that fullness, the fullness of that experience of being alive, the aliveness within. And you're also aware of the lack of it. And the best way to come out of the lack of it is, you say it, the allowance of it. To come out of resistance to what is currently still perceived as lack is the best, if not the only way, to come out of it. Because resistance is a mindset, if you will. It's a certain wiring. And to be in resistance to lack, again, what we resist persists. So if there's a sense of lack within you and you want to come out of that, it is to allow that sense of lack to be there, and that's what dissolves it, paradoxically. To the mind, that doesn't make sense. But that's how energy works. When you no longer resist it, it dissipates, it dissolves, it goes on its way. And all the more reason to have a mindfulness practice, because ultimately that is a practice in allowing one's feelings to be there, allowing one's thoughts to come and go, holding space for one's aliveness. And that's what brings us ultimately into this place of ultimate abundance, which is to just feel life in all of its facets, passing through us and expressing itself through us. And when we can be aware of that, when we can stay on the awareness side of things, then we're much bigger than anything that's happening. We become the container for what's happening. If we're aware of our thoughts, then we're bigger than our thoughts. When we're aware of our feelings, we're bigger than our feelings. Our awareness becomes the space, the container within which all of this is happening. So by definition, all that's happening is within us. It's contained. We're larger than it. It cannot harm us. It can trouble us a little bit, but no situation is bigger than us as long as we're aware of it. And when we're in awareness of it, then we have more of a 360 view on it. At least we're open to seeing different perspectives, different angles. We're not reacting to just one piece of it and then getting pulled into the smallness of that, but rather we're open to seeing a situation or what somebody said from all perspectives, because ultimately everything is true because it is. And so then we get into the space where the allowing sets in of that everything is valid by the mere fact that it exists, that it is. Somebody has said it, that's their truth. Nothing needs to be resisted. Everything can be allowed. And when we're allowing everything, then we're abundant. The more we allow, the more abundant we feel. And the more we allow, the more those situations will actually become visible and happen, manifest in the physical law of attraction. The only reason something isn't showing itself is because we don't believe in it. We're not allowing it. There's some limiting belief, some limiting energy inside of us. Lots of people are afraid of success. Like they do the work, they're allowing to the point where something shows up in the physical space, and something that they wanted and desired, and the moment it starts to show itself, fear kicks in, resistance kicks in, and it shuts it down immediately. So we have to stay throughout all these phases. That's just a learning experience as well. We have to learn to just stay in that allowing, receiving mode the entire time. There is no coming out of it. There's only being in it, existing as this allowing presence to everything that wants to happen, and being co-creators in that. So are we judging the person if we say he does not have our best interest at heart? But that is what is making me unhappy. As my presence is taken for granted, I don't feel valued. Okay. So the important piece is always to see things as they are. And the only way we can see things as they are is to not be in reactivity to them. That's the first piece. When we're in reactivity, we don't make good decisions. When we're in reactivity, we don't see things, solutions to situations that we would otherwise see if our mind was clear. And so the first step to any situation that is triggering us is always to notice the trigger, hold space for it. They're just feelings, and allow those triggers to subside. We'll practice this shortly in our meditation, so that we stay out of reactivity. Come out of reactivity if we're already feeling triggered, and stay out of it if you know it's a recurring thing. We develop that awareness muscle, so we no longer react to it. So then we start seeing things clearly, and step 2 is to then take clear action. But we can never know if our action is right action if we're still coming from a place of feeling triggered, from a place of reactive, kind of stewing in our reactive juices. So coming out of the reactivity is step 1, but then taking clear action is step 2. But you're working with really as much as of a 360 view as you can, as we were just talking about. The other question is, when we stay out of reactivity, we see things about the situation that we might have not seen before. One of those things is compassion. One of those things is empathy. One of those things is the ability to see things from the other person's perspective and recognize what's motivating them. When we're in reactivity, then we don't see all that stuff. We're pulled into resistance to the situation, and it's a small place. So coming out of that to see things for what they are, and then you might still find that this person is not up to your vibration, they're not equal or elevating, they're whatever it may be, and you'll take action based on that. But you may also see other solutions to how to deal with this. Maybe it's having a conversation in a particular way around a particular subject because we're empathizing with them. So we're able to come in closer. Things shift when we move in closer. Whoever we have judgment about or antagonistical with, label them as whatever. That labeling, that judging, it can only really happen when there's distance. When we move in closer, we can no longer avoid feeling their humanity and what they're going through. And non-resistance helps with that. It pulls us in closer, and then we can see things more clearly for what they are, possibly see other solutions. It will reveal itself. What the situation requires, what course of action will reveal itself. So I hope that helped. And more specifically, I wouldn't think of it so much as judging that person. It's more about yourself coming out of reactivity to the person is ultimately coming out of judgment, because what's being triggered in you is something that needs healing within you. And you want to feel valued, right? So that there's something there that wants attention, needs work. But if you're coming from reactivity to that not having enough, self-value or not feeling valued, then you put up a wall and you put up a resistance and it's a fight, versus dissolve that first and then see what it calls you to do, whether it be a conversation, whether it be setting boundaries, whether it be putting this person out of your life, and whatever it may be, or taking a break. I mean, it'll show itself. You just have to trust your inner wisdom will arise. It always does. Okay, let me make sure we don't run out of time here. Okay. Arjun, great question. If we don't react and just observe, aren't we like robots? Are you saying don't react to negative emotions, only positive ones, basically enjoying the present? Okay. It took me a long time to really understand this, that observing your feelings is not denying your feelings. Feelings are sensations that show up in your body as a response to an interpretation of an external event. The sensation is going to show up regardless. It's our reaction to the sensation, to feeling a certain way. That's reactivity. The feeling is there. It'll always be there. And the whole point of meditation, mindfulness, is to allow the feeling to be there fully. Up until now, up until establishing a true mindfulness practice, it's likely all we've been doing has been reacting to how we feel, reacting to those feelings, which is the onset of a feeling happens, and then we react to it. We don't, and that's what keeps it stuck. We cut it off from fully arising and passing. So we keep all these feelings stuck by reacting to them, pleasant or unpleasant. So observing your sensations, your feelings, is actually allowing the feeling to express itself fully without judging it, good or bad, pleasant or unpleasant, just experiencing it. So no, we don't become like robots. We actually learn to live and feel more fully. It's our natural state, ultimately. We're returning to our natural state of allowing thoughts to come and go, allowing feelings to arise and pass, because that's what they naturally do. Life is in motion. Everything is energy, comes and goes. It's always changing, and we're allowing that change. The previous question of allowance, right? So allowing the feelings to arise is what also allows them to pass. It's only a judging, a reaction to them, that keeps them stuck. So that also means that we allow unpleasant feelings to arise and pass. So it's not just about allowing pleasant ones, but we're allowing ourselves to feel fully, which again is the rapture of our aliveness, is the biggest feeling that we can have. The greatest experience is to allow everything to come and go and arise and pass, which is sitting in a place of awareness, of allowance. And then we become bigger than all of that. The same sensations arising and passing that were happening before, that we were reacting to, that was pulling us into the smallness of every single thought coming along, every single feeling arising. That's what kept us small. That's what kept life up and down, and this roller coaster of extremes. We don't even notice that they're extremes because we're always identifying with every thought that comes along and every feeling that arises, always reacting to them. But as we come out of resistance to them and reactivity to them, suddenly we're bigger than the situation, bigger than our thoughts and feelings. Our awareness is the container. And suddenly these things that used to take us on a roller coaster ride, these reactions, you take out the reactivity and only the thoughts remain coming and going, only the feelings, the sensations remain of arising and passing. Those things are much, much smaller. Our reaction to them is most of where our energy goes. That's most of our experience of a situation, is our reaction to how we feel. So when we lessen the reactive part, then the feelings start to become much more manageable, much more muted. They don't take us on a roller coaster ride like this anymore. You're the observing presence, and you kind of see these waves of feelings arising and passing. Some are pleasant, some are unpleasant, but you're so much bigger than all of them. As I said before, no situation can get to you any longer as long as you're grounded in your awareness of the situation. Great question. I just realized that the fearing of it, why the fearing of it? Because there is the possibility of good and less pleasant. It is both, and I'm good with the less pleasant piece. Yes, that's exactly it. To not be afraid of the less pleasant stuff. Because when we don't react to it, the less pleasant stuff isn't very difficult to manage. It's just less pleasant. There are days when I wake up and there's a depressed energy in me. I can feel it. Why it's there, who knows? I'm like any human, and we take on energy. We have stuff come up from the past, from our childhood, and who knows, a dream overnight. The fact remains, the reality of the situation is there's an unpleasant feeling in me, the feeling of depressed energy. And all you have to do is hold space for it, allow it to be aware of it. As long as you're in your awareness, that energy can't take you over. And in fact, by staying in your awareness, you're holding space for that energy. And by holding space for any energy, you're allowing it to come and go. And so then that depressed energy just leaves again. And we can do this with everything. Everything that arises, if we hold space for it fully, it leaves us. There could be things stuck in us from birth, because being born is traumatizing. And it may surface in our adult life in various forms and fashion. And then again, that's the journey, is to observe that feeling, is to feel it fully so that it can finally leave us again. Because if we keep reacting to it, it just stays stuck, and we keep feeling triggered by people, blaming our environment. I keep questioning myself. I have tried not reacting, tried conversation 2. I've blocked the person. I hope that helps me. Okay. So good. You took action. And action brings change to the dynamic, and see where that goes. And even when we find ourselves questioning ourselves, to be okay with that, to stay on the side of awareness. You're even saying it. You're aware that you're questioning yourself. So stay in that awareness of questioning yourself. And then that feeling of questioning yourself can't get to you. If you're aware of it, it's unpleasant. Look for where it shows up in your body. Engage with it. Look at its shape, its size, its color, its texture. What is it saying? Give it a name. Some people say embrace it. That's, a lot of inner child healing is based on this. But to no longer resist it is what keeps us, A, in a safe place, in a safe place of our awareness of it, and B, it starts to dissolve it. And before you know it, you can hold space for that feeling, and it won't stop you. It won't slow you down. And over time, it dissolves and disappears. Okay, one more question. I'm reacting.
Can I?
Yes.
Sorry, can I just add here? Actually, I've not been honest enough, but I have blocked again, because so it's not been the first time. It's been uh, a couple of times, and it's just that this person in my life has always come back, after or messaged, and I have responded. Maybe I've told myself that if I again kind of reply to that message, it's going to go back and forth, and again I'm going to feel uh in a bad way, which I always normally do. So how do I stop this pattern is what I want to ask, because I
Mm.
know that it's happened before, and I respond, and then again I block, and then this person is not in the same city. It's just that some occasionally when I go and meet my mom, where it's a 3-hour journey, so when I go there for my vacation, I happen to just kind of meet up for a few minutes or so. But how do I change this dynamic when I'm just so aware of it already, but it's just not helping me in the sense I need to take a call for myself, that
Mm,
uh, I don't know. Been into counseling, but then she said that it's always the counselor told me that it's kind of my fault for allowing it to happen, which I felt it was too judgmental for the counselor to say that. So it didn't go well for me, that session, and I didn't go back to her, obviously, for obvious reasons.
mhm,
So yeah,
mhm.
yeah.
So there's when things keep repeating, there's some people call it karmic, right? That there's some lesson there that still needs to be learned. And the best way to learn what that lesson is to really focus on sensations. Again, the feeling that arises right before you respond to a text message or some when the person reaches out. If you can deep dive into, expand your awareness around that moment, what's happening inside of you in that moment, that then makes you, text back. So it all comes back to we're always reacting to how we feel in all of our actions. That's an end result to something, a sensation that is arising in us. It could be a sensation of loneliness, fear of loneliness, some kind of lack of self-esteem. There could be something in there. It may not even be your own. It may be a behavior that was inherited from your family, some environment, that's something you saw in a parent growing up. It could be maybe you're such a big person, such a big healer that you're healing this dynamic for others because it exists out there. And empaths, HSPs, highly sensitive people, often have to, process other people's emotions, and that's their power. Nothing to be ashamed of. It's a great calling to have that heightened sensitivity. So whatever it may be, or wherever it may come from, ultimately the reality is that in that moment, it sparks something in you. It sparks some kind of sensation, some feeling that then sounds like more blindly you're still reacting to that by messaging back. But if you can dissect and stay really attuned to what's happening inside of you when that message arrives, or maybe right before even you message back, that is your space where you can expand your awareness, where you can expand the healing, the coming out of this pattern. So it'll keep coming, it'll keep happening in this shape or form or another shape or form until you really break that open, that part that of what are you reacting to inside of you that then leads to you messaging back.
So isn't it human nature to want to reach out to a person, right? I mean, it works both ways. Any friendship, okay, any kind of human interaction would need two people to communicate, right? But the dynamic I feel is just not helping me out. So
Yeah.
it's kind of messy anyways, but
Yeah. So you have these
yeah,
two competing sides, right? One is saying it's kind and generous, and that's what being human is about, and then the other side is recognizing that it's unhealthy. Again, these are conditioned thoughts that when we do something against our own best interest, because if we're not healthy, then we can't help others. If we're not in a strong position, if our cup isn't full, maybe you've heard that one, then we can't give, right? Because if we're on empty or running on fumes, then we're not a source of strength for others. So gradually, and this sounds like that could be the lesson, the core lesson here is more self-care, more self-love. Maybe there's something in there that is you're seeking love from others, that what it's pointing to is a lack of self-love within. And so nurturing the self-love within will help you not respond to others' offerings of that certain love or attention. And then we become less dependent on others for how we feel. Yes. And good. Okay. Thumbs up on that. All right. Okay. Awesome questions. We had lots of great Q&A today. So we're just going to do, let me get a thumbs up or down from everyone if you can stay longer, because then we can do a longer meditation. Otherwise, we'll just do a short one. Yes? Thumbs up. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll do a 5-minute. Okay, we'll do a short 5-minute breath awareness, observing our thoughts. And then we'll do a 15-minute body scan. So those who only have 5 more minutes, stick with the short one, and then you can drop off, and then I'll continue with the longer body scan for everyone that wants to stay. Does that sound good? All right. All right. Okay. Getting into a comfortable position with our eyes and mouth closed. Let's focus on the incoming and outgoing breath at the entrance of our nostrils. If you have trouble locating your breath, you may breathe slightly harder once or twice. And then return to natural breath, normal breath. Let the detail of your breath pull you in closer. If it's more in the left nostril, let it be the left nostril. If it's more in the right nostril, let it be the right nostril. Or if it's both nostrils, let it be both nostrils. Notice the temperature of the incoming breath. Notice the temperature of the outgoing breath. Notice if there's a difference. Notice the pace of the incoming breath. Notice the pace of the outgoing breath. Notice if there's a difference. And whenever you find that your mind has wandered, simply notice it and bring your attention back to the incoming and outgoing breath at the entrance of your nostrils. For those of you wishing to drop off, you may do so now. I'm wishing you a wonderful day. Everyone else, please remain. And bring your attention to the top of your head, your crown chakra, an area about the size of your fist. And notice any sensations that may arise. It could be a tickling sensation or tingling sensation, a prickly sensation or pulsating sensation, a stinging sensation, a feeling of ants crawling, sense of pressure or of lightness, hot or cold. Any sensation is a valid sensation. And if you feel no sensation at all, that's all right too. No need to look for a particular sensation. Simply observe what is, not wanting it to be different. Now shift your attention to your forehead. And gradually keep moving over to the left side of your head. And coming around to the back of your skull. Around to the right side of your head. Always noticing any sensations that may arise. Now continue on moving to your right eye socket. And over to the bridge of your nose. And on to your left eye socket. Moving down to your left cheek. And across to your lips. Over to your right cheek. And down to your chin. Always noticing any sensations that may arise. Moving down to the front of your throat. And around to the left side of your neck. Around to the back of your neck. The right side of your neck. Moving down into your right shoulder. And on into the bicep. And around to the tricep. And now the back of your elbow. And around to the inside of your elbow. Down to the inside of your forearm. And around to the outside of your forearm. Now into the back of your hand. And around to the palm of your hand. And into your fingers. All the way to the tips. Always noticing any sensations that may arise. Now bring your attention back to your left shoulder. And down to your left bicep. And around to the tricep. And the back of your elbow. Come around to the inside of your elbow. And the inside of your forearm. The outside of your forearm. And move your attention into the back of your hand. And around to the palm of your hand. And into your fingers. All the way to the tips. Always noticing any sensations that may arise. Now bring your attention to your left upper back. And slowly, evenly scan left to right. Moving down to your right middle back. Slowly, evenly scan right to left. Moving down to your left lower back. Slowly, evenly scan left to right. Always noticing any sensations that may arise. Now bring your attention to your left upper chest. And slowly, evenly scan left to right. Moving down to the right rib cage, slowly, evenly scan right to left. Moving down to your left lower stomach, slowly, evenly, scan left to right. Always noticing any sensations that may arise. Now move your attention into your root chakra, the area above your pubic bone. And gradually move your attention over to your left hip. And around to your left butt cheek. And your right butt cheek. And over to your right hip. Now move your attention down into your right upper thigh, first the front. And then the back. Down into the back of your knee. Around to the front of the knee. Down into your shin. And around to the calf. Now starting with the heel, slowly, evenly, scan across the bottom of your foot. Come around to the top of your foot. Now into your toes. All the way to the tips. Always noticing any sensations that may arise. Now bring your attention to your left upper thigh, first the front. And then the back. Down to the back of your knee. And the front of your knee. Moving down into your shin. And around to the calf. And starting with your heels, slowly and evenly scan across the bottom of your foot. Come around to the top of the foot. And now into your toes. All the way to the tips. Always noticing any sensations that may arise. When you feel ready, you may open your eyes. Relax your body. Notice your environment. Notice yourself in your environment. Notice the energy in your body. Notice your aliveness. I wish you all a wonderful rest of your day, wherever you are. Thank you for joining in.